Hello, dear friends. Hi from Rome. This is Silver, and I'm here today to talk about the fifth dimension. This is a concept that has always intrigued me. And when I learned about the fifth dimension for the first time, I was really very impressed. But I didn't know what the concept was. I didn't understand what it was, and I didn't understand it even existed. So I started studying and I started practicing what it means to live in the fifth dimension. And but I really wanted to understand exactly what they meant by fifth dimension. So I started reading lots of books, but this remained very intellectual. So I could grasp with my mind more or less what the fifth dimension could be or may be. But for me, it remained a very elusive concept until I really experienced what it meant to be in the fifth dimension. Actually, we all know in certain periods of our lives what living in the fifth dimension is, because when we fall in love, for example, and we are so happy and so elated, time has a different dimension. Colors have different hues, and everything is different. So we really feel different, and that is a moment in which we live in the fifth dimension because we actually transcend ourselves. We are able to go into another world in which our senses are empowered and our emotions are rushing, and we have good vibes. And this exactly is the period in which we live in the fifth dimension. But there are many, many other moments of our lives in which we can experience the fifth dimension. The real challenge is how to really live in the fifth dimension every single day. Well, that is really much more difficult because we all live in the three-dimensional world, we human beings, um, and for us, transcending the three dimensions to go into the fourth. Sometimes we will live in the fourth, and then going into the fifth dimension can be really difficult. However, there are many moments in which we can switch to the fifth dimension immediately. It is when we meditate, when we pray, when we sleep, when we daydream, when we are in certain mental states with specific brain waves, theta waves or delta waves, even alpha waves. When we meditate, we're in deep sleep, we daydream. So these are all conditions in which we can transcend our concept of space and time, and we can enter into this beautiful dimension. Everything is energy and flow. And flow, I think, is the real essence of the fifth dimension, because everything flows, energy flows, and things come in our lives through synchronicities, and so everything seems to flow seamlessly without any hindrances, obstacles, which sometimes we experience in our 3D dimension. And so I wanted to experience what it means to live in the fifth dimension more and more and more. And I have to say that I've been partly successful, so I'm not always able to live in the fifth dimension, but I can say that part of my day is in the fifth dimension, because this is the intention I set in the morning. I always ask to be in the fifth dimension, whatever happens. And if I realize that I am going down into a lower dimension, I use different techniques or moments of relaxation, or a meditation, tapping, or affirmations, a walk in nature, whatever I feel fit at that moment, or whatever I can do if I'm in an office and I only have a limited time, to be able to go back to that state of mind, consciousness, and soul and spirit, in which I really feel that I'm connected to everything else and to everyone else, and where energy flows, and I can open my heart and I can connect through my heart to other human beings, but also to angels or guides or ascended masters, ancestors. There are many, many techniques and many practices that we can use to access this higher level of living. And I think that it is just an expanded level of being. It's not a completely different life. Life is very similar to the three dimensions, but the concept of space and time are less rigid. So time can travel in a different way. In the fifth dimension, it is possible to travel through time, not with our physical bodies, but with our emotional bodies, with our spiritual bodies. We can go back, for example, to heal a past experience. If we had a traumatic experience in the past, we can travel through time with our intention, through meditation, with our prayers, to heal that particular moment in life, to understand what really happened, to release the emotions related to that particular event, and to change its outcome, and to change its ending. So, as if we are rewriting a film, a narrative, we change the narrative. In the fifth dimension, we can travel forward, we can go into the future, and we can visualize ourselves as we really are. So, enlightened beings, multidimensional creatures who are very, very powerful. And we can visualize ourselves according to our best versions, best version of ourselves. So we all have a higher consciousness. We all have a higher intelligence, and it is possible to befriend our higher intelligence and higher self through daily practices, and especially we can be able to trust our higher self. That is a difficult thing to do, because many of us do not trust ourselves. We have not been brought up to believe in ourselves. In many families, this is a very, very elusive concept. So many children grow up without trusting themselves. So they depend on others for advice. They imitate other people. They don't know who they really are. And because they were not, they had never learned to ask questions about themselves, to wait for answers. Many answers have been given by parents. Many answers are given by brothers and sisters, by aunts, or by grandmothers or grandfathers or caregivers. But many children are never able to really answer questions about who they really are. So they don't know. Many children grow up and become adults, and they don't know who they really are. They don't know why they're here, and what is their purpose in life. So they know very little. And that is a real tragedy, because I think that we should actually teach children at school, in the curriculum, what it means to be to what the self is, what the real self is, how to really live the life for which we have come to earth. And I know this sounds very strange, but I think that this is so important, because if we learn this as children, when we become adults, we become clearly more responsible adults and better um, adapted to this world. We can live more peacefully. We can have more abundance in our lives. That is why it is extremely important to do that as an early age. Because children, of course, when they're born and when they're growing up, they can be very confident, because otherwise they would never learn to walk. They are curious, they explore, but then sometimes they are denied freedom, or the freedom to choose, and even the freedom to make mistakes. So many children cannot even learn from their mistakes, because parents are always there for them to prevent them from even falling, or getting dirty, or playing with other children. So I think this is really a problem for them. So they cannot really understand their strengths, their weaknesses, how to overcome obstacles, how to really acquire an experience, because we are all here to learn. And in many cultures, such as my culture in Italy, failure is a real tragedy. So if people fail in anything, that is really bad. And instead, in other cultures, for example, in Israel, failure means that you can reconsider your options. You can actually see what has worked or what has not worked, and you can restart. So failure is actually an opportunity to learn. So culture dictates many of our behaviors. So in some cultures, such as my culture in Italy, failing is it really has a very bad connotation. So if you fail in school, or if your company fails, um, society looks really down on you, and this is like a stigma for many people. So people cannot learn, because we all fail in many small or big things, but we are all here to learn. And if we are not allowed to experience these emotions and these events, we miss out a part of our trip here on Earth, which is, I think, is a big problem. But tonight I would like to share with you an interesting technique that I learned to start getting close to the fifth dimension, which is a practice that we have to do for at least 45 days. I have already talked about this, and any habit, in order to be really acquired, needs time. Our brain has to be rewired or wired for that particular habit. And this requires at least 30, 45 days. So this practice should be done at least, let's say, for over a month. And it's not a difficult practice. The practice is to befriend our higher self, our higher intelligence. And we can do so every day by asking questions. We have to start from small things, and we have to start with yes and no questions. Very simple things, not big existential decisions such as, shall I get a divorce, or shall I change my job? Because that is a difficult question to ask, especially if we have not any habit of talking to our higher intelligence. So we don't know even how to get the messages. So the important thing is to start from things that are really not that important for our life. For example, shall I take the coffee now, or shall I take it later? And then wait for an answer. But then when we get an answer, even if the answer apparently comes from our rational mind, it does not matter. We have to act upon that particular decision. So acting upon that decision is very important because this is what creates trust. So our ego is always very wary of interference. So if the ego perceives that we are trying to get information, not from the ego, but from other sources, the ego gets a little bit restless. But if we learn to act upon the messages coming from our higher self, and the ego understands that that decision is for the higher good, also for the ego, which means survival, because the ego is there to allow us to survive in this world. So protection against danger, against attacks. That's why we can become afraid. So the ego is important for our life on earth. So if the ego perceives that that particular decision is what is the safest decision for us, then the ego follows suit. And the ego is not going to go against us. And so in this process, there is a kind of confidence building process that we create with our higher self, starting from very, very basic things. So if we see, for example, that we receive messages in a certain way, and that these messages, when we act upon them, lead us to have a better situation with respect to another one, we can go on. And after 45 days, we can start having an idea of what it means to follow our higher self. So the part of us which has a higher wisdom, better vision, a greater inspiration, more long-sightedness. So all qualities that are so important to live in the fifth dimension. And when we acquire this trust, when we really can trust that the decisions based on the messages from the higher intelligence, from the higher wisdom, we could also call it the source, God, angels. So those high-powered, high-frequency messages, if we learn how to act upon them and we see that the outcome is what is really good for us, then we can start applying this technique and actually integrating this technique in our daily lives. And we can start making, more profound decisions on the basis of the messages coming from this higher dimensions. Because in the end, what happens is that everything exists at the same time in the quantum field. So it's true that we are immersed in this three-dimensional world, but it is also true that since we are multidimensional beings, we also live in many other dimensions. So also in the fourth dimension, also in the fifth dimension. So when we befriend a higher consciousness, a higher self, we're actually talking to the part of ourselves that lives in the fifth dimension and who has an expanded vision. And the part of ourselves that lives in a world in which there is actually no need to go to war, no need for conflict, because cooperation is what is best for us, because we already know that. So nobody is antagonizing other people, because we know exactly that the world that we have created at that level works so much better than the one in which we live in the three dimensions, in the three-dimensional level. Because at that level, we have been taught that there is not enough for everybody, that only the fittest survive according to Darwin. So there is not cooperation, but there is always competition. Competition leads to war. and or conflicts and anger, frustration. So there are different kinds of emotions that we have already been able to overcome in the fifth dimension, and we no longer need them because we already live at that expanded level. So when we talk to our higher self, we're just talking to the part of ourselves that has already ascended to that dimension. And probably we are also living in higher dimensions. And we don't know yet how to get consciously to that level. Maybe we go there when we sleep through astral travel, and we don't know. Um, but we may have a glimpse of what it is in certain moments in which we are very much inspired, or when, for example, we feel the angels or masters or our ancestors close to us, because we know that in the quantum field, the space is so immense, so incredible that we don't even know how many millions of beings live there and where they come from. They may be, celestial beings from other planets, from other worlds, from other dimensions that we don't know. So the universe is so vast and is infinite, and we have no idea what it is there. But even if we don't believe in it, even if we cannot even conceive it, we can fake it, for example, and we can imagine, we can visualize ourselves living in that world. It is, I loved Harry Potter because the story was great, but I think it's a metaphor because we all should go to the school of magic, because magic exists in the world. There are so many examples of incredible magical things that happen every day when we open up to the infinite number of possibilities that there are, that incredible things can happen every single day if we pay attention. Because if we are open, if we have an open mind and an open heart, we can say, okay, anything is possible, so let's see what happens. And then we can be guided by the part of ourselves that already lives in a better world, in a more ascended world. So at that level, everything is really magic, because people probably at that level, uh, the creatures living at those levels don't even have to talk, probably. They just communicate through their thoughts, or they feel their emotions so strongly that they immediately perceive what is happening. And the relationship between mother and child is very much like that. So if mothers are listening to me, they know what I mean. There is no need to talk. Sometimes even looking at your child reveals so many things. I The same with pets. I talked about pets, and when you have a strong relationship with pet, you know what they're feeling. I know exactly what they're feeling. This happens to me with cats and horses. Today, I was riding a beautiful Arabian horse, a very cheeky young fellow who was, strutting around, very proudly. And he seemed to be too lively for the day. But he felt that I was completely relaxed, that I was enjoying so much his energy, that in the end, everything became totally magic. And he was carrying, I was actually riding a unicorn. It was just an incredible experience. And many people were just looking at me saying, I've never seen this horse so well with anybody, because generally this horse is considered to be like a daredevil. Through the air, like a magical creature, and I was actually enjoying it. And I think the horse felt so proud of being able to show his energy and not being restrained by people who are afraid. that everything worked out so well that I was so happy. And that experience is a fifth dimensional experience. You know, when you look into the eyes of your cat, of your dog, you're actually living in the fifth dimension, because there is so much that goes on between you and your pet. And people who love pets, animals, they know what I mean, because the experience of profound confidence and love that you may have with a pet is absolutely incredible. And we don't, even if we speak with our pets, I speak to my cats all day. People believe I'm totally crazy, but I actually talk to them a lot, and they can talk back. Well, we don't speak the same language, but in any case, there is so much love going on that we don't really need words. And I am sure it's the same thing in the fifth dimension. We don't need that. And we can travel through time. We are no longer constrained by space, because our body is in the three-dimensional level, but our emotional bodies, or ethereal bodies, or spiritual bodies can travel. So we can go wherever we want. We can do whatever we like. We can be whoever we want to be. That's why I loved Harry Potter, because people can transform themselves for the better or for the worse. But in any case, if we intend to be the better version of ourselves, we can grow and have a better experience and leave behind all the negative energies. Because when we ascend to another level, now those who are in the lower frequencies are not going to touch us, because they cannot reach us. It's like, living in the penthouse and they live in the basement. So it's magic. So if we do this so for 45 days, for the practice of befriending our higher self, we can really learn a lot. It is really important, as I said, to start from small things that are not really so relevant for our life. For example, if you have two different routes to go to the office, let's say, you ask your higher self, shall I go this way or shall I go that way? And just see what happens. The first thing that comes into your mind, just try and see what happens. And be open to see whether you have any other messages coming during the day. And I'm sure that after 45 days, as it happened for me and does happen to many of my clients, people start really having incredible journeys into the fifth dimension, because in the end, they start getting a lot of information that is not the same information we have when our egos or our minds, get in the way. Because our rational minds and our egos are based in the three dimensions here, and so they just think and behave according to what they know, which is a world confined in time and space, with rules, behaviors, cultural etiquettes, habits, and so they do what they can. But when you start having a different kind of information, so that there is no competition, but there is only cooperation, and that cooperation leads to better results, and that cooperation gives you abundance, and that there is so much abundance for everybody, your life changes. Because of course you experiment that is not only an intellectual concept or something you read in the books, this is actually real for you. Because if, for example, you are following the advice of a higher intelligence and you make a business decision, then this is going to give you more abundance, more happiness, a better life. So this is what we all want here. And probably that decision can lead you to meet people that really can give you more in your life, and you can fulfill your life purpose, because you're maybe working for something that is so close to your heart. And probably this is the reason why we have come to Earth. And so everything is so connected. And at that level, we have so many synchronicities. that we just have to pay attention. And it is as if we then live in this magic world where everything is really possible. And, and there is so much energy, so much abundance, and we don't need to depend on anything else. So we become really more independent with stronger boundaries. We no longer need to follow the others or imitate the others, because we have already everything. Actually, everything that we ever want is already given there. We already have it there. So if we want to have it, we just go there. So we don't have to strive in this three-dimensional level to have a desire fulfilled. We just go to the upper levels because that desire has already been fulfilled at that level. So this is a very powerful example of manifestation, uh, and of attraction, uh, because we are able to experiment in our three-dimensional life what we can achieve in the fifth dimension. We can actually bring it down. So it's like it's so these worlds are not actually separated, they're all interconnected, and so we can travel from one level to the other, and without any problems, because we can actually bring down a lot of resources, and we can actually integrate them into our bodily life, into our real physical experience. But we can always go there in another form to learn, to really have more knowledge, to have the right messages, to better understand um, the beauty of the universe, for example. And so it's really exciting. So I think you should try this technique for 45 days. And if you have any experiences to share, please write to me on my Facebook page. Unfortunately, I was not really able to be very much present on the social media because I've not felt very well lately. Nothing really serious, fortunately, but I had to take care of myself. I had a very stressful situation I had to solve before Christmas. I managed to solve it thanks to the wonderful messages coming from my higher self and the higher dimensions and my angels. But then I had a period of real recovery. That is why, but I'm going to be more active on my social media very soon. So if you want to write to me, it's a great pleasure for me to share with you these experiences. And I give courses about all these techniques. And if you want to share your experience with me, I would be delighted to know what it is for you to live in the fifth dimension. If you have ever experienced anything like this, if you want to experience everything like this, and or whether you know some specific techniques to go there, I will really look forward to hearing from you. And so this is what I wanted to share tonight with you. And it is always a pleasure to be here on this beautiful network with so many wonderful light workers and wonderful people who really want to improve and ascend and have a better life. So I would like to say goodbye from Rome. And this is all for tonight. And see you in 2 weeks. Bye. Ciao from Syl.